Hello, welcome to my shed. As you can see, we have a large-ish Scalextric layout, and today we're going to be talking about a power base, a Scalextric power base called the Pacer unit. Now, the Pacer unit was released in the year 2000, or at least it's in the year 2000 catalogue, and it is designed to allow you to program a car. So you drive the car around the lap, any car. So for those people with a large collection of varied cars, they can use any one of their cars. They don't have to have magnets in them. Indeed, I don't use magnets at all, so they can be magless. So you drive any car around the track, and in programming mode, it will learn the throttle response that you provide to that car. So that's both the acceleration and also the braking. Once you've driven the lap, or the instructions themselves recommend you drive a number of laps, once you've driven those laps, you can then press race. And the pre-programmed lap, the best lap that you drove, the car will then go and replicate. Now, as with everything in life, it's not quite that straightforward. I found that when you do program laps, it's best just to program a single lap rather than trying to program lots of laps, and there are reasons for that. It's about how quickly the unit collects the data and also how the unit replays that information, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So with me using these flags, what we're going to do, rather than do the fastest lap that I could possibly do with this car, which ends up being a very complicated lap to unravel and to understand how the system itself works, we're simply going to accelerate down this big main straight here, and then this infield straight here. We're going to use these two straights to show you how quickly the information is collected, but also how quickly the information is replayed. And that'll give you an idea of how good these units are and whether or not they would fit your use case should you wish to go off and buy one of these units. So let's say I'll use these flags, and that'll become a bit clearer later. So you've got the green flag, red flag for the infield site, and then you've got the red flag, green flag for the main straight. Now, with regard to the competition for this style of unit, and remembering this is from the year 2000, there are a number of other options that you can have. Now, I'll say to you, the Pacer that I've bought, and you'll hear this again a bit later, is £50, okay, 50 UK pounds. I think I paid 42, but if you think about £50 as being your sort of price for this unit, it gives you an idea of whether or not it's something you wish to chase. I will say this, I have seen one go for about £15 on eBay, 1.5, so they do go cheaper, but there's not many of them. The unit itself comes as a sport track. I beg your pardon, the unit comes as classic track. That's the old rubber track, the old classic lugged track that people use with a very narrow or not a very deep guide. There are people who have assured me, and who I certainly believe, that the unit did come on the sport track as well. However, in the 6 to 9 months I've been watching eBay for these things, I've never seen one. So if you are going to buy one, you're going to buy it on classic track. And what we'll do is we'll have a look at it in a bit over here on the table, and I'll explain to you what it is that I've done in order to get that to run on my modern day track, my Scalextric Sports track. So we're going to do a full programming. We're going to program two very different types of cars. So one car which I would call a normal car. It's a car from about 2015, Scalextric period, and it is, for all intents and purposes, the same as any modern type of GT car that you're going to buy or own. And then we're going to go to a very old style car, albeit it's slightly newer, but it's an old style car, so that again will give you an idea of running older cars. And you can see I've got a collection of old cars down here which I run using the unit. So as I say, what we'll do is we'll come back to that, we'll do the laps and you'll be able to see how the unit performs. But for now, what I'd like to do is just pop over to the table, get an overhead camera and run through a few more details about what the Pacer unit itself is, how it works, and how you can modify it so that you can run it on a modern day track. Okay, see you at the table.
Okay, welcome back. So here we have a few things. First of all, this was the original catalogue entry for the Pacer system. What Scalextric said was Pacer system 2-car racing challenge for solo drivers. And then there's further blurb about that. You can read about that yourselves. And then we have the instruction booklet. Now, the interesting thing about the instruction booklet is how it describes what it is that you should do. So it says that you should fit the track, fit this piece of track into your circuit, which we've just been looking at, where the car will be travelling at a steady speed along a straight section when it passes over the sensor. Now, if you look here, this is the sensor that they're talking about. What they also say is that when you are driving the car, you drive it for several laps. But again, I've already said I prefer just to do that single lap. And it says that it's important to drive at a slow to medium steady speed, and they emphasize steady, and they want you really to not be erratic with your driving. But again, as I say, I've already kind of covered that off in terms of what we're going to be looking at in a minute, which is looking at it running between 2 points. When I'm on my own and I'm programming it, I would probably program in 3 to 4 acceleration points on my circuit, so coasting around all of the corners. But there are other places where I would accelerate to make that lap a little bit more competitive. Now, the unit itself, just pointed out the sensor to you, sits on a piece of track. This is classic track. That's what I meant by the lugs. So we need to get this into a sport track environment. You can either buy sport track conversion pieces plugged on either side of this and then plug that into your sports track. Or you can reconfigure the unit, as I'm going to show you in a minute. The unit itself has got 3 buttons, one called program. So I press that and this system goes into programming mode. And then as I drive around the track, it will record the voltages. And then when I click stop, that will be saved in the unit. My last lap is effectively saved in the unit, but the car is no longer waiting for programming information. And then when I click on race, then the car will automatically drive around the track and I can follow it and see how it behaves. And then I have this dial, which is minus and plus, and I can turn it down to slow the car down, or I can turn it up to speed the car up. And again, we'll cover off that use case and why you need that when we look at the actual unit itself working. As for this sensor, this is isolated, so there's no voltage going onto this, even when the track rails are live. It's separate from the rail, but with the brushes, as they go over it, what they do is they charge it and they send a voltage spike down to this unit, and that tells it that we got the beginning of a lap. And then as the car drives past, it starts to collect the data of the throttles that you're using. With regard to throttles, you need to have a mono plug style throttle. You can see here, so we've got the plus and minus, just 2 parts to this. So you see the black bar separates it. If your throttles are of this sort, so you can see there are 3 parts to that with 2 black bars, they won't work. These throttles support braking, whereas this hand throttle does not support braking, so the unit itself doesn't brake, but we'll only have mono controllers. So the actual details of removing this, if we turn the unit over, we can see that there are 4 screw holes. We remove those screws. I've just got some sticky tape here representing those screws. And then underneath, what we have on the unit is wires coming out of the unit. 2 wires go to this rail, rail number 1. 2 wires go to this rail, rail number 2. And then a 5th wire is attached to our sensor. So I'm going to put a picture up in the top left-hand corner so that you can see that. And then all you do is you desolder all of these wires, and then what you have to do is you have to take this sensor out, and you have to build your own sensor into the Scalextric Sport track. I just use a Dremel. I Dremeled a slot down like that so it was nice and wide. I removed the original sensor, and then I hot glued that sensor back in, making sure that it wasn't touching the rail so that it was isolated from it. And then turning it over, you simply then solder back on. Now for my use case, I'm using Arc Pro to run this lane and also do the lap counting on this lane, but I don't power the Arc Pro on this lane, so I've also had to remove the Arc Pro from powering that lane. So I just simply connect the unit in. I've got a plug here where that goes and plugs into that lane, and then I have the sensor wire here. I plug the sensor wire in, and then I'm away to go with this now in my Scalextric mode. So very, very straightforward if you know how to do soldering. If you don't know how to do soldering, you're probably better off looking at buying those sport track to classic track conversion pieces that you can get. Okay, so that's the main unit, and we'll now pop over to the track and see how it actually works, so you can decide whether or not this sort of thing is for you.
Right, hello. So what have we got here? So here's the Pacer unit that we just discussed, and you can see the plug here. So it's plugged in to power that rail. The only difference is my sensor is actually here. Now, there's a very good reason for that. I tried when I first got the unit, because everything is over in this corner, I plugged it in here. The problem I had, and we'll talk about this in a minute with regard to the responsiveness of the unit, the problem I had is quite often I wouldn't be decelerating by the time I hit this corner, and the cars would just crash off the track. When I had it in the middle, it kind of works okay, that's not a problem. But when you want to use this in an advanced way, so I actually want to race my cars from the start line all the way around the track using the Scalextric app or the Magic Arc app with my Scalextric Arc Pro. So I actually want to have a proper race, not just sort of like join it halfway through. The problem here is that when I accelerate, I'm having to brake almost immediately, and so my acceleration profile on the straight is broken up, and we'll see how much that's broken up by in a second. So up here, what I find is that I've actually got enough of a run down the straight in order to be able to start the car on the start line and have it run through. So we'll have a look at that in a second. Now, these flags represent my ideal acceleration point, and this red one represents the braking point. Remember, the car, the controllers, the unit doesn't support braking. So if I was on my Arc Pro unit, I'd be braking around here, because then the car physically brakes at this point and slows down enough for the corner. Because I'm coasting, I'm going to be letting off the throttle at this point, and then the car will coast and go around the corner. In order to show you how this unit works, to really understand how it works, or at least I hope you will, I'm only going to be accelerating and braking in these two areas, okay? So everywhere else, I'm just going to coast all the way around, get to this point, accelerate, brake, coast all the way around, accelerate, brake. I'm going to use this car. It's not my normal car that I would choose, but it's really noisy. And so you're going to hear this car when it accelerates and when it's coasting. So you'll really be able to appreciate the difference between the lap that I'm going to run and input and the lap that the unit itself will then replay. So we talked about there are three buttons on here. So I've got program, race and stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit program. The red light comes on. I don't have to start straight away. I can just sit and watch it. So I'll do it now. We're under program mode now. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to run the lap that we just discussed. So accelerate, stop accelerating or brake at this point, coast around, get to this point and accelerate. And remember, those flags are right at the point where you would normally accelerate your car. So right at the beginning of the straights in both of these scenarios. So let's go. So accelerate, brake, blah, blah, blah. Coast, just coasting around here, coasting. Little bit of acceleration, and then we cross the line. Now, I hit the stop button the minute I cross that line. I can pick the car up and go walk it back, or I've still got full control. This is a really nice feature. I never ever lose manual control of this car. I can always use it whenever I need to do so, and it comes very useful when you want to sit at this end and have your race at that end. So I press the race button. Now the car is driving itself, so that's not me driving it. Okay. So let's listen for this acceleration point. All right. It's not here. Okay. And equally, this acceleration point is not there either. So we're accelerating about here, but the bigger problem is I'm accelerating about here. So the acceleration is happening later on that point, and it's happening earlier on this point. So the way we address that is we have this plus minus dial. So I'm going to increase the speed that this car runs at, okay? By maybe 10 degrees, I think I just increased that by, okay? So now we've got our run down there. The main problem with that would be the corner. And now I've got a bit of an acceleration burst happening here. Okay, so this is the replay of this lap. 2 acceleration points. So I'm accelerating there. Put that there. And I'm probably braking about here. And on this one, accelerating about here, braking about here. The controlling factor of me and running this car and how I can run it faster is this corner. If I'm making it around this corner, I can increase the speed. So again, we've dialed it up maybe 15, maybe 20%. So still comfortably making it around that corner. So I'm going to boost it up again. We've got no problem on this straight whatsoever. Okay, back end's going out a bit now, but you've got a reasonably reliable run. Now we've got a difference between what we just saw, which was consistent running, and our start run. The problem is, on our consistent run, we're running at this point and then we're over the sensor and then we shoot down the straight. From a standing start, it's a very different proposition. And what we often find is that the dial that we've just put in there, the speed that we've just put in there, is too much for this. So I'm going to knock it back just a corner, click on race and then run that again. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll clean those tyres just so you can see the improvement on that. So no, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy with that. Now, we can improve on that. I've got this working very well. I've not got this bit working very well. So normally I'd go back and I'd re-record my lap, replay that, replay. But we're just going to stop at that point. I'm going to run this car. Okay. Now this car is not a match. This car is faster than this car, not a match for one another. So this is why it makes it interesting running, but it's worth seeing anyway. So we hit race on that. We'll fire up the Arc Pro. This is a wireless throttle running this system here, and I'm going to drive this car. So you might see on the video that it's a little bit tail happy. Can't really get the power down, but it gives me a good run. I'm being kind, I'm not like throwing my tail out, I've got a bit there actually. I'm giving him room to manoeuvre. I really try and drive, oh, there we go, see, I really tried to drive and I threw it off the corner just to show that I am actually trying. So that is the basics of setting up this particular car or this particular system. But that was a very, very sensible car, very normal car if you like, and you get better and lesser degrees of success depending on the type of car that you use. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to set up this. This is I love this little car. It's a Scalextric Legend and it is a Maserati 250F. Now the thing about the Maserati, I'm going to clean the tyres while I talk, the thing about the Maserati is it's got tiny, tiny thin little wheels. I don't know whether I said this, but none of these cars have magnets in either. So they're all just relying on their own grip in order to be able to make it around the track. I've actually done a post about grip and how I do grip, but effectively using bits of tape, using bits of oil, I get as much grip as I can out of the rubber tyres and indeed the silicone tyres as well. So we'll coat these ones up and we'll get them running. Of course, there's no point in me running this car against the Opel or the Porsche or any of the other cars that you see here on the table, or any of my other, I have about probably 60, maybe 80 cars, because this is just not in the same league. So I'm going to run this against a Formula Junior. This is a Lotus, so I'm going to run that against the Lotus when we've got this lap built in. We spoke about the 10-second rule. Now what happens at 10 seconds is that whatever your last controller input was is looped, continuously looped. I.e. the car goes into static mode, just single speed. It will just stay at that. Now if the last second of that 10 seconds was you at full throttle, obviously you've got no hope. But with this track, my track, this section here, from here back to here, you can run this at a single speed because it's all roughly the same. There are slightly different corners going on here. There's an R3, a couple of R2s, a couple of R3s up there as well. But essentially this is an R2 loop. So as long as I can get to this point, or at least, to be honest, it's at the braking point, so it's back here, within the 10 seconds, then the rest of the time, the 12, 13, 14 seconds, the car will just roll around until it gets back to here when it would shoot off again. So what we'll do is we will run that car and see, you know, what the laps look like, and then we'll discuss some more about it. So click on program and then run this car around. Okay. All right, that last bit I did at a constant speed, in case this were to come in under the 10 seconds. And the reason it may have to come in under the 10 seconds is because I may need to slow this one down based on how fast it comes down to this corner or how it behaves around that part of the track. So let's just have a look at that. So we click on the race button, and then there's a red button here. You may or may not be able to see flashes and flashes. But I'm very, very aware that I need to make sure I watch this car because I want to see how it's accelerating and where it's accelerating. So I came off here because I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing. I'm going to give it a little bit more speed and see whether or not by giving it that little bit more speed, it will allow the car to A, make this corner, and B, get to the right place. It won't. So rather than me mess around, I'm just going to re-record that lap. So place the car back in front of the sensor, click on the program, come down, and this time accelerate there. So accelerate much later and then go to my standard speed. So click on the race button, I can drive the car around, seeing as I'm up, chatting to you, I'll just go back, place it where I need it to be. So there she goes. Still not accelerating in the right place, but that may have been lap number 1. Remember we said there's a difference between lap number 1 and subsequent laps. Much better at that point. Okay, so I actually turned it down just a touch there, just to make sure I got around that corner. But yeah, all looking really nice. So I'm going to clean the tyres, and then we're going to run a quick race, okay? So get those tyres cleaned up. Bit of oil just to add to the grip. Okay, get that nicely rubbed in. And then get our junior, just a bit of oil residue on my thumbs, so I'm just kind of giving that a little bit of grip as well, so that we can get that down. Okay, so that runs on this one, again the Arc Pro controller, and all I do is click race. So there is a chance that this won't make you around the first track, but we'll see. So here we go, 3, 2, 1, and off. So now I'm racing cars that are similar in terms of performance. My junior's got away because, there we go. Now what I like about this being variable speed is that at the corners you are going a similar speed, you know what I mean? You're with a fixed speed car, with a magnet car, as soon as you get to the corners, they come barreling past you and they can knock you out the slot and all the rest of it. Whereas with this, because we're both accelerating and decelerating, we're both running very similar lap profiles. So there you go. Anyway, again, oh, there you go. So again, I can tweak that lap and make it slightly more difficult for me to race against. But the real point, I guess, that you want to get to with all of this stuff is to say, I can pick any car out of my collection and I can enjoy it on the track, racing against another car. Now, you can see there's a whole bunch of old F1s down here. I love running those, they're really, really good fun. But when you run a like for like, so let's say you ran the Brabham against the Saudi Leyland, right? They're both very, very equally matched cars. Obviously with our Pacer unit, we've got no brakes, whereas with the Arc Pro, we do have brakes. So I'm always going to be able to outbrake and drive quicker myself than the pace car. So what do? Well, if you've got one, get a faster Formula One car. So I've got Scale Auto F1. That's a brand that has extremely quick speeds. So I can use that as the pace car, and then I can race any of the older cars against that particular car. Now, my Scale Auto is also it's an 80s car, it's not a 70s car, but you can do that. Or alternatively, you can use the apps. So I could use the Scalextric app, and I could dial down the voltage on the rail that I run in order to make it more competitive against that particular car. But to be honest, I haven't found it to be a problem. I've always found a car like for like that I enjoy racing against, as you know the example we've just seen here with the Maserati and the Formula Junior. There's always something I've got within my collection that makes it fun. And with regard to running the apps, you can run those. They all work. So the Scalextric Art Pro Racing app, I can have those. And I can even do pit stops, believe it or not, by just pressing the stop button, and the car stops and the pit stop runs for the pace car, and then you click race again when the pit stop's over, and then the car will take off. Of course, that's more for fun than anything else. Indeed, the whole unit is really just for fun. In summary, these units are not cheap. You're looking at 50 quid, give or take off eBay. Maybe you get it for 40, maybe it'll be a bit more than 50. And that's a lot. That is an awful lot. Would I buy it again? I think I probably would. I've had an awful lot of fun with it, and it will be a part of my circuit going forward now, because I like watching two cars drive around at the same time, and I dislike fixed speed cars because either I have to open them up, put magnets in them in order to make them competitive, or I need to and also in that, as they're driving along, whilst I can overtake them on the straight, no problem at all, as soon as I come to a corner, they come flying around and more often than not knock me off. As I said, and as we saw with these two cars, you've got the same race profile. So, you're all accelerating down the straights, you're braking for corners, you're accelerating and braking in the same places. So it's quite a lot of fun. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. And got any comments, let me know. Take care. Cheers. Bye.